There's something cruel about being loved out of obligation. That was the silent thread woven through every family gathering, every dinner table smile, every forced hug I received from the people who were supposed to know me best. They said things like, "We're just worried about you," or "You know we want what's best," but their eyes told another story, pity-laced with resentment. They looked at me like I was the tax they paid for being born into a family that had to carry a weak link. My name is Jasmine. I'm 29, and in my family, I was the girl who never quite got it together. It didn't matter that I had survived a breakdown in my early 20s or that I'd rebuilt my life slowly, brick by brick. To them, I wasn't the fighter who came back from the edge. I was the failure who cost them sleep, money, and embarrassment. The night that burned itself into my memory started like any other reunion. Warm casserole smell, overdone wine, jokes recycled from 10 years ago. Everyone gathered at my parents' house to celebrate Dad's retirement. It should have been simple, safe, until I went to grab a sweater from the back hallway and heard them. My brother Marcus, my sister-in-law Dana, my cousin Trent, even Mom, all huddled around the kitchen island, voices low but sharp. "I'm just saying," Marcus whispered. "She's pushing 30, still working part-time, still hasn't bought her own car. What does she even do all day?" Dana, "We can't keep pretending like she's normal. It's draining the whole family." Mom sighing, "She just needs more time. But I'll admit it does feel like we're always adjusting things around her." Trent, "And now she wants a piece of Grandma's house? Are we serious right now? She's a burden, not a stakeholder." My knees nearly buckled. I gripped the door frame so tightly my nails left crescent moons in the wood. A burden, not a stakeholder. That's how they saw me. That's what they said when they thought I wasn't listening, when they assumed I was too fragile to challenge them, too passive to fight. I stepped back before they saw me, smoothed my face, walked into the kitchen a few minutes later with a fake smile and no appetite. The rest of the evening played out in a blur. I sat through dinner like a ghost. They joked. They poured wine. They toasted Dad. They avoided eye contact with me, maybe out of guilt, maybe out of habit. I drove home that night in silence, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The word burden repeated itself with every mile like a drumbeat. I didn't sleep. I sat on the floor with my old journal open, tears pooling in the creases. They didn't see the work I had done, the nights I spent quietly researching, building skills, consulting on small digital projects that never made headlines but paid the rent. They didn't see that I had helped fund Dad's medication last winter with a freelance gig they didn't know I had, that I had edited Marcus's resume, that I had babysat Dana's kids for free. All they saw was what I lacked. That night, something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not even in grief, but in clarity. They would never see me for who I truly was because they needed someone to carry the shadow of the family's disappointment. And if I remained in that role, they would always feel righteous about pushing me down. So I made a quiet vow to myself. They will never get to define me again. And if they saw me as a burden, then I would become the kind of burden they could never forget. One that held the deed to their favorite house. They say grief brings families together. In ours, it ripped the last thread. Grandma's passing wasn't sudden, she'd been fading for months, but when it finally happened, no one spoke about her with reverence. They spoke about the house. That 2-story home with the blue shutters, the stone path lined with roses, and the ancient kitchen that smelled like cinnamon and lemon balm. It wasn't just a house to me, it was sanctuary. The place where I was never too much or too slow, where Grandma would cut my cheeks and whisper, "Let the world rush, we're not built for its speed." But to the rest of the family, it was a check waiting to be cashed. The first cracks appeared at the wake. Between small talk and cheap coffee, I overheard Marcus talking to Dana. "Real estate in that part of town is exploding," he said. "If we list it now, we'll get offers within a week." "Dana, we should talk to Mom and Dad. Get this split up before Jasmine starts expecting anything." I stood 6 feet away. I wasn't invisible. I was ignored. A week later, the emails started. Group threads titled "Next Steps with the Property" and "Dividing Assets Fairly." No one asked for my opinion. No one asked if I wanted a say. They assumed what they always did, that Jasmine would quietly fold and nod, that she'd be understanding. that she didn't have the resources to push back. When I emailed and said, "I'd like to be involved in decisions about Grandma's house," Marcus replied with, "You weren't contributing to upkeep or care. We just didn't think it made sense." Translation? You don't make money, so you don't matter. Then came the family meeting. Mom hosted it in her living room. I showed up early. I wore my best button-down, hair tied back, journal in hand, ready to speak. But when I walked in, there was already a printed spreadsheet on the coffee table labeled Proceeds Allocation, based on contributions and need. Next to my name, a big red $0. I stared at it. Then at Marcus. "This is a joke, right?" He didn't flinch. "We just thought—" "No," I cut in. "You decided. That's different." Dad cleared his throat, uncomfortable. "Sweetie, you've had a hard few years. Maybe this is just a fresh start for everyone." Fresh start? They were dividing a legacy like it was a math problem and erasing me from the equation like I never mattered. That night, I went home, opened my laptop, and began researching every inch of the property's deed history. I learned something they hadn't realized. Grandma had refinanced the house 5 years before passing and still owed a significant balance. And if they couldn't agree on a payout plan, the bank could seize it, which meant it wasn't theirs to fight over yet. They didn't know that, but I did. And I kept that information close like a seed waiting for soil. Over the next few weeks, the family fought harder. Calls turned into arguments. Emails turned into insults. Sabrina, my cousin, accused Marcus of trying to rig the sale for a friend's firm. Trent demanded compensation for mowing the lawn for 2 summers. Everyone was clawing for a piece. No one was grieving. No one visited Grandma's grave. No one opened her last journal. No one cared that she once told me, "This home should be filled with kindness, not contracts." They didn't deserve it. They didn't even see what it meant. But I did. And I was quietly forming a plan that would make sure none of them ever held the keys again. I stopped replying to their emails after that. No more group chats. No more just trying to be fair calls. No more sitting at the edge of family drama while they passed plates of control around the table like appetizers. Let them think I was hurt. Let them think I was licking my wounds. What I was really doing was planning a move that none of them would see coming. I took everything I knew about the house, the lingering balance, the liens, the squabbling, the stalled sale, and began treating it like a chessboard, not a battlefield. First, I created a new LLC. Not in my name. Not with any connection to my personal bank. Just a clean, faceless entity called Elmhold Ventures. It sounded boring, which made it perfect. Next, I began saving with the intensity of someone who'd been underestimated her whole life. I sold old tech, resold clothes, flipped forgotten books. I picked up remote freelancing gigs, design jobs, even overnight editing projects. For months, I slept 4 hours a night. While they argued over inheritance percentages, I was building liquidity. While they sent texts full of passive-aggressive suggestions, I was reading about foreclosure auctions and distressed asset acquisitions. While they thought I was retreating, I was becoming lethal. Then came the moment I had been waiting for. The house sale finally fell through. Marcus had tried to go behind everyone's backs and lowball the other heirs out of their shares. The rest of the family revolted. A full collapse of negotiations. The property was returned to holding status and listed as bank-owned pending resolution. One missed quarterly tax payment later, and that house, my grandmother's house, the place where I learned how to make tea and how to breathe, was quietly reassigned for private sale through a holding intermediary. They didn't even realize it. Because I moved faster than their dysfunction. I sent the offer through Elmhold. I included a small renovation budget and a promise to settle the debt in full. Within 30 days, the house was mine. Not inherited. Not gifted. Earned, purchased, secured. I didn't tell anyone. Not at first. I let them keep fighting. Let them keep talking in circles about lawyers and division and who had keys. Meanwhile, I had already changed the locks. I had signed the title. I had walked through the empty kitchen, stood in Grandma's favorite sunroom, and placed my hand on the windowsill where I used to sit as a child, and whispered, "You're safe now." They found out 3 weeks later. An email chain was started by Dana. "Has anyone heard from the listing agent? There's no update on the house." Then a second one from Trent. Why is it marked sold online? Did Marcus make another move? And finally, one from Marcus. Furious. Someone bought it under a shell company. I'm hiring a lawyer. That's when I sent one line to the entire group. You don't need a lawyer. Just a thank, you would be nice. And then, I attached the closing document. Signature, Jasmine Holloway, Managing Director of Elmhold Ventures. The reaction was nuclear. Sabrina accused me of betrayal. Trent said I robbed the family. Dana called me mentally unstable. And Mom, she didn't say anything for 2 days. When she finally called, her voice was barely above a whisper. You bought it? Why? I didn't yell. Didn't cry. I just said, because Grandma said the house should go to someone who loved it, not someone who wanted to liquidate it. But what are you going to do with it? She asked. I paused and smiled. Not keep it. That would be too easy. Because I hadn't bought the house to win. I had bought it to rewrite the ending. And they were about to find out what happens when the burden writes the check. I could have kept the house, turned it into my private sanctuary, remodeled it with care, filled the rooms with soft furniture and silence. But the truth? I didn't want it for me. I wanted it because they didn't deserve it. And I needed it to stand for something more than their entitlement. So I sat at the center of that quiet house for one last time on the hardwood floors where I once played with Grandma's beaded necklaces and made the decision. I would donate it. But not just to anyone. To someone who understood what it meant to feel disposable, like I had. First, I cleaned the house myself. No maid service, no team. Room by room, I scrubbed and swept and touched every corner as if I were washing away generations of neglect, not of dust, but of dignity. In the upstairs bedroom, I found an old picture of me and Grandma. She was holding my hand in front of the fireplace, grinning like the world had never told us no. I kept that picture. The only thing I took? Then I met with a local nonprofit, Hearth and Rise. They were building transitional housing for women who aged out of foster care girls who were often dumped by the system at 18 with no money, no family, and no chance. Girls like me. Girls like I could have been if Grandma hadn't taken me in. I didn't tell them who I was at first. Just said I had a house and I wanted to donate it. They were stunned. People don't just give away properties like this, the director said. Maybe they should, I replied. The paperwork took time. So did the zoning changes. But once the logistics were clear, I signed the final agreement. The house would become a residential mentorship home for 6 women at a time, each with a room, a job connection, and a safe place to land. They offered to name it after me. I declined. Call it Grace House, I said, for my grandmother. 3 days later, I made the announcement. No fanfare. No press. Just one email to the family chain with a photo of the plaque on the door. Grace House for the unseen, the undervalued, and the resilient. And underneath I wrote, You said I was a burden. I turned it into a foundation. The fallout came fast. Marcus tried to call me 4 times. Sabrina sent a text. You always make it about you. Mom left a voicemail through tears. That was our history, Jasmine. Ours. And now it's gone. I didn't call her back. Not out of spite. Out of peace. Because for the first time in my life, I didn't owe them anything. Not my explanations. Not my effort. Not my silence. A week later, I got a letter. From one of the girls living at Grace House. She wrote, I've never had my own bed before, never had someone hand me a key and say, You belong. Whoever you are, thank you. You saved me before I made a mistake I couldn't take back. I cried. But not because I was sad. Because I was finally whole. And the house they fought over? It was finally what Grandma wanted it to be. A place of healing, a place of legacy, a place of grace. They were so sure it was Marcus. That was the first thing I heard through whispers, texts, and half-spoken gossip. When the family learned the house had sold, no one knew who the buyer was, but they all thought they did. Of course it was Marcus, Dana said smugly at Sunday dinner, according to Sabrina. He always knows how to close fast. He's been handling it through a trust, Trent added. You know how rich people do things, privacy and all. I almost laughed when I heard that. Marcus couldn't even spell LLC. But let them talk. Let them believe whatever they needed to feel powerful, even if it was a fantasy. Meanwhile, I stayed silent, not because I was scared, but because I wanted the reveal to be loud enough to echo. I waited until the house had been fully transformed. New paint. New lighting. New locks. New life. The day Grace House officially opened, I stood by the mailbox at sunrise with a small envelope in hand, placing it into the slot myself. No fancy courier, no tracking. Just a simple card with thick paper and sharp ink sent to each of them. Inside was a photo. The front porch of Grandma's house. New sign above the door, Grace House. And standing beneath it, 6 women smiling, holding welcome kits and room keys. Below the photo was one sentence. You said I was a burden, so I gave the burden a home. No name. No explanation. They didn't need one. 2 days later, my phone lit up like fireworks. Marcus, 8 missed calls. Dana, you went too far. Sabrina, what the hell is this? Mom, 1 text. Please call me. I didn't. Instead, I let the reality settle into their bones. That while they were fighting for square footage, I was fighting for meaning. That while they were haggling over pennies, I was giving people hope. That weekend, they all drove to the house. I didn't need to be there. A neighbor sent me a picture. They stood in the driveway like strangers, Marcus with his arms crossed, Dana pacing, Mom wiping her eyes as she looked up at the new name etched into the wooden sign, Grace House. For the unseen, the undervalued, and the resilient. They couldn't go inside. The locks were changed. The deed wasn't theirs. The past wasn't theirs to control anymore. It belonged to someone else now. It belonged to healing. Later that night, I got one last message. From Mom. It simply said, I don't know if I understand what you did, but maybe that's the point. You didn't do it for us. And she was right. I hadn't. For once in my life, I had done something entirely, unapologetically for myself and for people who would never have treated me like an afterthought. And it was enough. More than enough. When people think of revenge, they imagine grand speeches. Explosive moments, slammed doors, final showdowns where the underdog walks away triumphant and glowing as the villains stare in disbelief. But in real life, the most powerful revenge is quiet. It's not keeping what they wanted most even after you've won. And that's exactly what I chose. Because I didn't just take the house. I freed it. The news of the donation spread faster than I expected. What started as a whisper in our family circle became a ripple in the community. The local paper ran a headline, Former Family Home Transformed into Sanctuary for Women in Transition. An online blog shared a write-up with the caption, Sometimes healing looks like handing someone else the keys. There were no interviews, no credit to my name. I stayed invisible by choice this time, letting the story speak louder than my face ever could. But words still got around, especially to people who once thought I was nothing. Marcus called me again. I didn't answer. Trent left a voicemail. You're not even going to monetize it? Sell it to the nonprofit? What, you're just going to throw away hundreds of thousands like that? Throw away? They still didn't get it. They were clinging to the idea that power is measured in what you keep. But I had learned something different. True power is shown in what you can walk away from and still feel whole. Mom came over a few weeks later. No drama, no lecture. Just her, standing at my apartment door with that look she used to wear when I scraped my knees as a child, that blend of guilt and wonder, like she was seeing something for the first time. I brought you these, she said, holding out a bag of warm cookies. Grandma's recipe. I found it in her drawer. I took them. We sat in silence on the couch, the sun stretching across the floor like an old friend. After a while, she finally spoke. I always told myself I was protecting you, that you were too fragile, but really, I think I was afraid you'd outgrow us. I didn't respond right away. Just watched the light shift on the windowsill, the same way it did in Grandma's sunroom all those years ago. Then I said, I didn't outgrow you, I just stopped shrinking to fit you. The final twist wasn't just giving the house away. It was freeing myself from the need for permission, recognition, or revenge. I didn't need their apologies anymore. I didn't need to prove anything. They could keep their spreadsheets, their rankings, their need to be seen as the successful ones. I had already become something more powerful. A giver. A builder. A woman who writes her own ending. Grace House stands to this day. The paint has faded slightly, and the roses out front have bloomed wild. But the rooms are full. The walls hold stories. The hallways carry laughter, tears, and second chances. And sometimes, when I pass by, I see a young woman sitting on the steps, clutching her welcome packet like it's a map out of the darkness. She doesn't know me, but I know her. Because once, I was her. And now? She's home. They don't talk about me much anymore. Not at family gatherings. Not in birthday calls. Not even in the obligatory Christmas group texts. I've become the unspoken chapter, the story they skip when telling others about how the house was lost. They say it was mismanaged. That the bank got involved. That things fell through. But never the truth. That the burden bought the thing they fought over and gave it away before they could bleed it dry. And that silence? It hurts them more than any confrontation ever could. In their world, I was the girl who was supposed to apologize for needing help. The girl who was supposed to fade into the background, smile politely, and accept scraps. But now? They know I became a ghost with teeth. The kind who doesn't haunt with screams, but with stillness. The kind who walks away and never looks back. The kind who makes them ask themselves, what if she was never the problem? Months later, I ran into Sabrina at a coffee shop. She froze when she saw me. Eyes wide. Fake smile. A twitch of discomfort in her jaw. I smiled calmly, lifted my latte in a soft cheers, and said nothing. Just walked past. She didn't say a word. Because what could she say to the girl they called a burden, now standing like a woman who had nothing left to prove? Grace House is now home to over 30 women every year. They come in with worn bags, heavy hearts, and eyes that don't quite know how to hope anymore. And every time a new one walks through that door, I see a version of myself. And I whisper to them sometimes out loud, sometimes silently. You are not what they said you were. You are not a burden. You are a beginning. I visit every month. Not to run it, the staff has that handled now, but to water the roses out front, the ones Grandma planted. And every time I dig my hands into that soil, I remember how it all began. Not with power, not with revenge, but with a girl standing in a hallway hearing her family say she didn't belong, and choosing from that moment forward to become her own inheritance. I am Jasmine Holloway, daughter of the forgotten, student of silence, writer of endings no one saw coming. They called me a burden, but I became something they could never carry. And that is my legacy.